Hey family, welcome to Clitch Talk.
Alright family, today at Clitch Talk we have the only one, Tino Chibebe here. Thank you Tino for being at the podcast. But today's not even a podcast, it's more actually a conversation that we're trying to have because you wrote a book, The Black Opportunity. But people actually want to know who's actually Tino, and that's basically what I'm gonna cover, and also my selfish questions after reading your book, and that's the plan of today.
Cool. Sounds like a good plan. So first of all, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, you sharing your platform with me. And your question was, who is Tino? So
Yeah.
born and raised in Zimbabwe. So I'm Zimbabwean, very proud of that. Moved to Belgium like late in my high school, and proceeded to then live and grow up here in Belgium from there. I am a program associate at Impact Shakers, where we're like an impact ecosystem with an incubator, accelerator, and fund for underrepresented founders that are building impact businesses. I am also an author, like you said. I wrote the book The Black Opportunity, which explores venture capital and Afro-European entrepreneurship. I am also a big rap fan. I love rap, I love sports, I love football, basketball. I'm currently watching the NBA playoffs with a lot of interest.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's about me. It's a weird question being asked, like, who is Tino? It's like,
But that's something
I did something that is worthy of listening to on a podcast.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to cover a lot. Like you say, you come from Zimbabwe. Who was Tino in high school?
Who was Tino in high school? So there's two versions of Tino in high school. So there's the Tino who was in high school in Zimbabwe, and then there's the Tino who was in high school here in Belgium. So the Tino in high school, I was very confident, very active, very out there. I did multiple sports, and I was pretty decent. I was pretty good at academics as well. Did a lot of extracurriculars, and I was very narrow-minded because I had very clear goals that were not only set out by my parents, by myself, but also by the institution that I went to school. So it was all boys Roman Catholic church school, and they had a certain way of doing things, a certain way they rewarded certain people for having certain mindsets and accomplishments, and I was really like just within that framework, right? And then there's a Tino in high school here in Belgium, where I did my last 2 years of high schooling, and there I was more of a reflective person. So that might have coincided with the fact that I was like now 17, 16 at the time, right? So it's a combination of like age and also just like the change of environment that I was just now more reflective, more a little bit lost, but like in a good way, because I'm trying to find myself, trying to find what I like, my interests. And so I started like delving more into like writing, literature, poetry, etc., etc. So there were two versions of me for high school.
And like in high school, in your book, you express how you started a business. Like the discipline from home, from school. Like, how was that? Was that rewarding from school or not?
Yeah. So calling it a business is a little bit of like an over exaggeration.
A project.
Yeah, it was like a project, a little enterprise, like a little hustle that me and my friends did. So for those of you that don't know, that are watching or listening, my friends and I, it was two friends of mine, shout out to Fari Bakura and Tafadzwa Kufajine, we decided to sell biscuits out of our school lockers. And why did we decide to do that? We noticed the demand, like people wanted these biscuits, but they didn't really have access to them, especially like whilst they're at school. Like, you know, it's not like the stores like at school or outside of school. So like we would bring them to school, store them in our lockers, and then sell them. And so yeah, that was our little enterprise. Was it rewarded from home? Not necessarily. I don't think my parents knew about it until like I wrote about it in my book, right?
Oh,
They'll
wow.
just know that, like, you know, we need to take Tino to the store to buy biscuits. He's just doing his thing. They didn't really care about it because, like, you know, I was just like getting good grades.
Yeah,
like, so like, you know, it's just a little side thing that I did. So yeah, how did it combine with the discipline from school and home? It was just like a little extra thing that me and my friends did to make an extra $1. So yeah, it wasn't really a big part of our lives, but like for those few months that it was running, like, yo, we were on to something, I think.
That's amazing. But once you had that experience, you see that problem solving aspect. You are selling a product, people like it. And when you came here in Belgium, did you had that same, you know, love to, hey, maybe I want to start also a business here? Was there the same level, or did you, when you were observing, you know, your new environment, were you already thinking as well like this, or you were say, okay, here I'm just gonna keep more academia?
I think here, like what you said, more so like sticking to academia, sticking to myself, really, not really trying to like do too much because like I'm not home, you know? So like when you're not home, when you're not comfortable, like you don't have that full range to fully like express yourself, go into like businesses, go into ventures, and you know, try different things. You just want to like, you know, draw as least amount of attention as possible to yourself as like, you know, a black person coming from wherever I'm coming from into Belgium. So no, definitely wasn't like enterprising like that at during the later years of my high school because we moved here. But then a couple of years later, whilst I'm in university, I was part of a full-purpose fashion brand, and there we sold clothes, and the profit we made we would donate to charities.
Wow.
So I think like during my tenure at that company, like we donated to about 3 charities, and our charities would be chosen by our customers.
Wow.
So that was the model, and yeah, so I think that project was sort of like a reigniting of that like business, see a problem, supply, you know, do things to sell and figure out like what makes people buy things, etc., etc. And you know, there was also an element of, you know, notoriety, like there's some attention that's involved in that, there's some vanity, and that attention feels good, you know, like knowing that people are buying your things, people are coming to you for a product, and you can exchange that product for money, and that's like, you know, something that you can observe, like the money pile is stacking up, like you can see, you know, that as evidence of your ideas, as evidence of your work being valuable.
Man, you touched on something beautifully when you just talked about you were in your own environment, you had a freedom to do whatever you wanted. And once you come to a foreign country, that you limit yourself with all this curiosity, I will say. Do you think that's a big problem for young entrepreneurs here
I think
in
so.
Belgium, that they may have all those ideas, may want to do, but because they don't feel home, or the country doesn't make them feel home, where they don't, you know, pursue that?
For sure. I think definitely, and it happens with anyone really. When you go into a new environment, you may not, especially like coming from your home and then like entering into like a new space where you're now part of like a diaspora community, like you're not as like entrepreneurial as you would be back home. You're not as willing to like go outside, make friends, like talk to people as you were when you were back home, because it's just not home, right? You don't have like the familiarity, you don't have the know-how, you don't know where to like get certain products, certain you know, raw materials to get whatever product that you want to like sell to people. So like it's, although it's not like impossible, it takes more time, I think, and it takes more guts and like more willpower to make that happen.
And how should we look that differently when we see young people here with maybe they don't feel like that, but how can we give them an advice like this is maybe the way you should think differently about this situation? Because I mean, we're in Belgium, there are some amazing people, and you are part of an amazing venture capitals fund, I will say, from Impact. How will they need to think differently in approaching it now?
So I think right now there are a lot of people in Belgium with migration backgrounds that have been here for like 3 generations. So like what I'm talking about doesn't affect them as much. So we see them starting the companies, right? We see them already like being active and doing the things. For people that are sort of like quote unquote first generation, I'd say like find your community as fast as possible, connect with the relevant people as fast as possible, and learn from them how to navigate. Because like it's cool to like learn from, you know, regulatory information like that's out there. You can go online, figure out how to start a business, etc., etc. But it's a different thing altogether to learn from someone who's already done it. Who knows like the specific language, the specific tools, the places. They have like a different level of access than you do. So like, I'm a really big fan of just reaching out to people who've done it already and trying to learn from them. So that's what I'd advise them to do.
So actually, you talk about access, and that's something a lot of founders, you know, struggle with here in Belgium. How do you see to solve that problem, to give them more access, one, but also is there that such thing as the black network that you mentioned in your book? Can you a little bit elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think in terms of access, I think there's work that needs to be done on both sides. But I think more particularly and more specifically on the people with the capital, with the access already, right? And that tends to be people outside of our community, so outside of the black community, right? I think there should be a conscious effort for them to reach out to, you know, diverse communities within Belgium to look for entrepreneurs to invest in, to look for new ideas, right? Why? Because there's an opportunity to make money from that. Not only that, but there's also an opportunity to create differentiated products for the whole of Belgium, first of all, but also for those communities that those people are serving, because they also create products for their own community. Does that make sense? So it's like you are providing the capital, the know-how to address certain community needs. And I feel like those communities will rise up, will improve, and whatever like pain points that they're experiencing will be addressed by those founders. So that's on that side. And then on the entrepreneur side, like diverse black entrepreneurs, I think what they need to do, it isn't a lot, I think, because I think they're already doing the things that are necessary.
Nice.
But I think an extra step would just be sort of like communicating their businesses via venture capital language, via angel investment language, so as to attract those types of opportunities.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So like you might have like a great business on paper.
Yes.
Like you have all the fundamentals, like you have revenue, you're addressing a pain point within a community, you can scale, but like you don't present it like that and with the language that's necessary. And sometimes I think that can only be learned if you have a network that can advise you on that.
What are the main languages that you always see that you don't have that
it's just like VC jargon, right? And like I think there is something that I'm also trying to like figure out, like should we speak VC jargon in order to access opportunities? Does that make a lot of sense if like there's like business value? I'm not sure. That's still something I'm trying to like figure out, right? So they call it like investor readiness. So I think a lot of businesses in our community, if they want investment, if they want to scale, if investment is necessary for their scaling process, they need to be investor ready. And a lot of that is incorporating the language, understanding your business, the numbers involved, etc. And, pitching to as many investors that are willing to listen and would be beneficial to add onto your cap table.
How is it important to actually find a relationship with the right investor for your business?
So, full disclosure, I'm not an entrepreneur myself, right? So all the information that I have is from like observing people around me, like studying, talking to some founders that have become my friends, and just like some founders within the ecosystem, right? But from what I've heard and what I've observed, is it important to have investors that are aligned with your vision, with your mission, and that can help you achieve both of those things 100%, right? You don't want to have an investor who kind of doesn't get your business, gives you the wrong advice, doesn't have the right network connections, and all they have is money, right? Sometimes only having money to scale your business is good, but I think what's better is having an investor that can actually help you in some sort of way to like get from point A to point Z.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense, because it's really difficult sometimes, because as early founders, you only think about money. Like, hey, I just need $1 million, $2 million, but you don't think that investor actually needs to do maybe some work that it needs to get to the next milestone, because only cash. I mean, if you get the cash but you burn it, the burn rate is very fast sometimes, or don't have the right connection for your distribution. It's very complicated, and sometimes I think early founders just only think about the money that they can receive to scale, but forget the other aspect of building basically a relationship where they can get to the next level.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to shift some gears a little bit, but also go back with your book. The part that I really was mind-blowing was the aspect of networking.
Okay.
When you were expressing that, Zuckerberg's go to a barbecue and he's like, what should I do? Oh, okay, here, and get a check. I would love to have a community that we can also be in that space in the future, that we can go on barbecue and, pitch our ideas or businesses and have that capital. What are the things that you see that can help founders on how to network?
Social media.
Social media.
Yeah, social media is a really big one. Like LinkedIn, Twitter, especially. I think I think what those platforms have done is like lower the barrier to like accessing certain people. I actually went to lunch with a founder the other day. So full disclosure for context, it's a white male founder, right? So I went for lunch with him, and he told me how he met his first angel investor. And he met his first angel investor via LinkedIn.
Wow.
So he just like sent a message like, hey, do you want to look at our business?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And then, apparently the guy looked at the business, and then he invited them to their office. They had a conversation, and then, it went quiet for a little bit. But after a while, that particular angel investor came back, and he was like, hey, would like to invest in your startup. Here are the terms, blah, blah, blah. And then they wrote a check.
Wow.
So, power of LinkedIn. But I think it is important to note that, one, it was a white male founder. They are Cambridge educated. So there's a lot like going for them already. And on the other side, like the angel investor themselves was white as well and male. But with that context like included, I do still think like social media is really big. So fix up your profile and reach out, be brave, and take a chance.
Because sometimes like like even saying that I was like social media, don't you have to go to events, etc., and meet some people? But it's true. It's just be bold enough to reach out, and I think 90% of the people don't even do that.
You did that.
I did.
Do you want to tell people your story about how you reached out to a VC investor, and then they were like, hey, so what's your business? And then what happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I was talking to with you, and I just sent a message to Fusi on social media, because he just did a clip about how he wanted to hire a young lady and who is going to be very beneficial for his business on how to make more deals. And he didn't even actually talk to her like, hey, this is the payment, this is blah blah, but he went more about what the other person was caring about. And what she was caring is about really creating a future Africa in her own hometown in Nigeria. And it touched me the way he expressed that, and I felt like I'm not being bold enough on social media right now. But hey, here's a Fusi giving so much value. Why not shoot a text? He might answer, he might not answer. Maybe it's his team who take care of it. But that's what I did.
And you got a reply.
And I got a reply, and that's when I texted you. Oh wow.
And that's good, right? Like you were brave. You reached out. He reached back out, and then you sought advice within your community. So that like you can go back and show value, show that there are synergies between you, and I think like by doing that, like you can get so much done. I think, for example, like and we talked about it before, and I think we're gonna talk about it later. Like the book I wrote, like literally like everyone I reached out to was just social media. Like, hey, writing this book, blah blah blah. Can I interview you for like an hour and share some thoughts? And that's how it was. It came to be, you know, just social media and reaching out to people. Going to events is also super important. So, for example, not to plug my own thing here, but like if you came like to my event, my book launch, there were so many people that are working on Afropean entrepreneurship. So like if that's your thing, and if you wanted to meet those types of people, you need to look for those types of events. And
thank you for that, because I came to your event, and I was immediately in contact with one of an investor, And yeah, shoot them a text again, email after the event. Hey, thank you. This is what I learned from you. How can we have a sit down? And brother, that was amazing because you just had a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah.
So the reach out was more easier because he said, hey, I just remember you.
Yeah.
So yeah, events is really a big thing. You have to put yourself out there. And about your book, man, I just want to give you also publicly a thank you for I felt really appreciated to be part of your book, and it did a lot to me. It felt like I was able to express myself because I was going through a tough time,
Right.
and having a safe space to actually communicate. And even though before we didn't know each other like that, but you say, hey, oh, express yourself, and I'm like, oh, I didn't have that confidence to do that to somebody else, and you allowed me to do so, and I really want to say thank you so much because
No worries,
it was really amazing, man.
No worries. You're very welcome. And on my end, I also have to say thank you for allowing me to write about you and your story, and yeah, giving me that opportunity to include you in my narrative. I think that's also something super hard to do, right? Having your story out there, and yeah, I thank you for trusting me with that.
You're welcome, because the thing, what I also want to ask you, why, while I was reading, you writing pictures. Where did you learn that? Because it was literally every word that you wrote, it was like I can literally see it. Like it felt like a movie, man. So where did you learn that?
Good question. I try to write and like immerse people in the story. So like give you as much dimension of whatever I'm describing as possible in order to like place you in the moment that I'm writing about, right? Yeah. Where did I learn that? I feel like it's a combination of places. So firstly, I'd say it's like from rapping. I used to rap when I was like way younger, like 14 to 16. And when you're rapping, you want to impress with each and every sentence you have, right? Because you have a minimum amount of sentences to like communicate your point. So it's like you have 16 bars usually, right? And in those 16 bars, you have to impress as much as possible. Part of that impressing is like using similes, right? So it's like something silly like, I'm so fly, I'm fly like a jet, right? Stupid, like that's not representative of my rapping ability. But you're telling people just like how fly you are by using effective simile, right? And like, so it starts from there. It also starts from like me trying to do my best impressions of writers that I also love that do that.
Okay.
So for example, Chimamanda Adichie, Malcolm Gladwell, No Violet Bulawayo, they're all really good at immersing people by describing the environment they're in, and that's where I learned it from, through rapping and through imitating some of my favorite writers.
Man, yeah, rapper. How far did your rap career go?
I think we had about 5 songs.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, we were trying to make a mixtape, but we didn't end up fulfilling that dream because our boy band broke up.
Oh.
Yeah, it broke my heart. Yeah, it's okay.
It happens. So you actually use that that rap skill set in writing, and where is that love coming from actually writing as well? Because it's one thing to have the skill set, but it's another thing to write a book.
So I think it comes from the fact that I like to express myself and communicate with people, right? And I think with expression, you can also beautifully express yourself and accurately express yourself, so that the other person completely understands what you're feeling and what you mean, right? And on some level, I try to do that in all areas of my life, and I think part of that desire is rapping, because you're beautifully, effectively communicating exactly what you feel and what you want to say.
Okay.
It will evolve into things like writing books. It might evolve into things like producing film, podcasts, you name it, like just mediums of communication. I'm naturally a communicator, I think, and because I want to do that well, I find myself doing it through various mediums like rap and like writing a book.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Wow, that's beautiful, man. That makes really sense. Wow, so you're a natural communicator. So you know your gift, and you basically are navigating and using your gift in different ways. Sometimes it might be weird for some people to say, hey, he used to be a rapper, or he knows how to rap, but he used that tool, your gift, to communicate into a book.
I wouldn't say it's a gift, though.
No?
No.
I mean, if you say you're a natural communicator, I mean,
I'd say
that's a gift.
I feel most comfortable when I'm communicating.
Okay.
Some people feel most comfortable when they're painting.
Yes.
Some people feel most comfortable when they are playing basketball.
Okay.
Or football, or doing math, right? I feel most comfortable communicating. Is that a gift? I don't know.
I think so.
I wouldn't necessarily call it a gift. I would say like I feel most comfortable doing that.
Okay.
Therefore, I feel most comfortable like using various mediums to communicate.
Yeah. I mean, wow, that's amazing. So what was like the hard part for you to write in your book?
What was the hard part for me to write?
Yeah.
I think it was definitely writing about the experiences of so many people and so many Black entrepreneurs, and writing that with accuracy, and also hoping to like also communicate my message. So like you're trying to,
Mikhail sent new messages.
Can you edit that out?
Yeah.
I should probably put that on silent somehow. Okay. So, I'm trying to tell your story, but also tell my story.
Yeah.
Right? I'm trying to like, describe the things that you went through, but also use that to speak about the bigger message.
Yeah.
Right? On a surface level, like it seems like pretty easy to do, because like it's like straightforward, like, Black underrepresentation in VC and tech, etc., etc. But there's a certain level of accuracy that I have to commit to. There's a certain level of dignity that I have to write with, and that I have to maintain for my subjects.
Yes.
And listening to all these stories is hard, because these are stories that aren't happy.
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing to take those stories and to, re-communicate them with a specific narrative. I found that was pretty hard, challenging. I had to like, go back and forth with my personal network and my community, like, have I represented this in the best way? Like I shot you back, like the parts I wrote about you, like have I represented you in the best way, And taking all of these like stories and like doing that was pretty difficult. Interesting, worthwhile, but also difficult.
And what have you learned after releasing the book? People reading it, people commenting, people sharing. What have you learned from that experience so far?
I think I've learned that if you feel like there is something that needs to be said, but no one has said it yet, then you should say it. And regardless of like the level of execution, people will value it because you've said it, and that's already a step. Does that make sense?
That's powerful.
Yeah, so I definitely learned that. And yeah, I learned that when you're vulnerable, people will appreciate that, and people will mirror that, and you know, sort of like reward you for that vulnerability.
Yes.
And yeah, I think those are the two things I learned.
Wow. But also I have another question for you, Tino, is you've done a lot in this short period of time. What maybe other people might see like, whoa, he wrote a book, he did that, even in your book, I was so amazed how well connected you were, because I didn't know your story like that. And how, because for me it was like very amazing, but at the same time, don't take it off as an offense.
Yeah,
but
no worries.
some other people from the other side felt like, who is this guy who has this boldness and kind of privilege to do that, like, because they've been here all the time and they haven't had this maybe opportunity or to do so, or maybe get that stage if they already wrote a book and they felt like maybe a sense of jealousy or a sense of not hate, but like, why him and not me, sort of thing. How did you felt maybe the negative quotation from the community who, or maybe felt like that?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't felt that at all. So that's interesting feedback that you're actually introducing to me. But to comment on how was I able to do this, I would say definitely privilege. I'm very privileged person. I'm a very privileged person. I say that because, you know, my parents have both had stable jobs like all of my life. My mom not so much, because like we then moved here and then she became unemployed for a while, because like, you know, she's my dad's partner and he came with the job here, and it's difficult for her to find work, language, etc., etc. But yeah, like, privilege. My parents have always paid for my education, for example. They paid for my university, for my room and board. Some people don't have that privilege. I'm privileged in the fact that throughout my education I've gone to private schools. Other people don't have that privilege. I'm privileged in the fact that my parents are patient with me, and I think that patience also comes from the fact that, you know, we're not rich by any means, but we're comfortable. I'd say we're like middle class. Right? So that allows certain flexibility for parents to have with their children. They can tolerate me, you know, saying like, engineering is not for me, I want to go to business. They can tolerate me, you know, taking my time with my education. They can tolerate me trying to rap, trying to write a book, etc., etc. Like that level of like financial security also allows for comfortability. So I'm very privileged in that fact. Right? So that's one thing. And then another thing, I think privilege compounds, which means like once you have like one sort of type of privilege, it allows you access to another and another and another, and like the snowball
Yeah.
like gets bigger and bigger, faster and faster.
Yeah.
Right? And that privilege compounded and allowed me to have a certain network
Yes.
at my disposal
Yes.
to be able to reach out to certain people.
Yeah.
It allowed me to have a certain language to be able to communicate in certain spaces.
Mm.
So that would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, because wow, thank you for even being vulnerable and share that,
Yeah.
because sometimes it's, you know, we need to open the gate to really understand like my life of doing that and be able to write a book. It comes way back,
Yeah.
and there's a community behind it that
Yeah.
you just see, hey, he's just a young black man who just wrote a book, who just
Yeah.
came from Zimbabwe. How?
Exactly.
And sometimes
there are a lot of
Mhm.
decisions and a lot of circumstances that have nothing to do with me
Exactly.
that have been like handed to me.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
know, because of my parents,
Yeah.
my environment,
Mhm.
you know, the bubble that I lived in,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like there's more to people's stories
Yeah.
than the surface.
Exactly. No, because thank you so much for sharing, because and I think the audience and the viewers will look at that and go back and see the reason why you may be not successful is there's some tools that you didn't have access to, and that's the reason why you're not there at that young age. And be patient with yourself. I will say be patient with yourself and take your time and go find your community, like Tino said. Go in, be bold, ask questions, because from there on, before you know, you build a little bit your privilege, and the snowball effect comes, and you can then be ready. Because sometimes something that I learned yesterday, having a conversation with Manasseh, was that a lot of
I think you need to tell the audience who Manasseh is.
well, Manasseh is definitely a friend of ours. He has a finance consulting business, Momentum. He's a sharp man, very sharp, and you will also see his interview soon over here if Dylan edited. I don't know where. And yeah, we had a conversation yesterday, and because he consults mainly black-owned businesses, and some of you are now ready, or you have an amazing product, but your process is not ready, and that's why he was giving an example even yesterday with if you write a book but you don't have a process behind. If people say, hey, I need 10,000 books, can you deliver that tomorrow? And that's what he basically helps the people, like, you're not in that stage yet. So build up your stages, improve your processes, so the consumer can basically actually be happier. And that's what you did. You kind of started early in high school, buying biscuit, being in an environment that you were allowed to do whatever you wanted to do because you felt appreciated, you felt home. So that level of already experience gives you more, ability to do, hey, let me push my limit a little bit further. Till you come here, you observe, you say, hey, there is a problem, because you have a problem-solving mindset. There is a problem, hey, let me write a book while you are in uni. Because for me, in my opinion, when I was reading your book, I felt like more it was a thesis.
Okay.
That every student after 4 years or 6 years write about a subject, and you took actually that as a thesis and you put it in a book.
Right.
And that's why, in Africa, my parents always say, well, they wrote a book, and the book was a thesis. And I think everybody already who graduated or already who didn't graduate has a book or a thesis that they can explore. So what are those questions? What are those problems that you are seeing? Don't just sit there and don't do anything, but write about, communicate, and you know, I will say, yeah, spark us, and that's where your conversation started with. Black Opportunity and VC is actually a spark. Hey, you know, this is out there. Sometimes we don't know.
Yeah. So just some comments, like amazing stuff, everything that you said. I don't think everyone is a writer, but everyone has like their unique thing that they feel most comfortable in.
Exactly.
And they can address whatever pain points, or they can, you know, do whatever they want with that specific skill they have.
Exactly.
Right? So not everyone is a writer. Not everyone should like watch this podcast, listen to this podcast, and think, "Oh man, I have to write a book."
Yeah,
like,
no, that's not that's not the plan.
Like, just you know, use whatever you uniquely have to, you know, pursue what you want and pursue something that might bring value to your community or the world at large, right? And secondly, just like to go back to like the idea of privilege thing, I also had like the privilege of growing up in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
Which means that when I went to my doctor, she was black.
Wow.
When I would watch TV, my president is black. When, you know, I go to school, my teachers are black. And, you know, I think that also meant that I can look up and see people that look like me doing every single thing that they set their mind to. And I think that also does something to, you know, someone's psychology. I think it definitely did that for me. Like, I also saw my dad, you know, he is a trade unionist, and he was, you know, protesting against the government. And, you know, the courage with which he protested, organized the workers, and his belief in what was right also inspired me to also, you know, pursue righteousness at some sort of level, pursue justice at some sort of level, because like I have that example of my dad, and I also have the example of my mom, who is like super hardworking. My mom is also ambitious. My mom does not believe that there's anything in the world that she cannot access, I cannot access, and you know, her children can't access, right? That also is inspiring for me, and I think also influences how I approach the world and see things. So I think those additional privileges also add to what I am, who I am today.
Man, I think we're gonna close that on that. So Tino, once again, thank you so much for your time. Today was actually a conversation. Make sure you go pick up the book, The Black Opportunity, and learn the journey of Tino. But today was more a brother, and show you who's Tino Chibebe, you know. And I just want to say I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
worries. Thank you for having me, bro.
Thank you.